All right, welcome back. Today we're continuing our latest RBT mock exam, where we're going through the next set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and our famous combo pack. Questions, comments, let us know. If we've helped you in any way, please spread the word. You can look into our YouTube memberships if you are looking to support us even further. Other than that, let's work hard, let's study hard, let's get to our questions. Question 1. You're talking with a parent when they tell you about a new behavior they are observing from their son. Parent tells you their son will clap 3 times for no apparent reason. Parent says the clapping occurs when the son is alone, doing work, or even playing video games. What would you hypothesize is the function of clapping? Function. Maybe the most important thing you need to know as an RBT. Whenever a behavior occurs, the first thing you need to think is, why did that behavior happen? And the function is describing that why. In this case, we're going to hypothesize, why is this clapping occurring? Well, in order to identify the functions, we need to know what the functions are. We have attention, so we're acting to gain attention. Escape, acting to escape from something. Tangible, acting to obtain something. And then automatic or sensory, which is just alone. And typically, when you're looking to identify a function, we're looking to see when it's occurring and what's maintaining it. In this case, when is the clapping occurring? Well, the clapping occurs when the son is alone. So it could be attention-based, right? Also when doing work, so it could be escape. But it also occurs when he's playing video games. And so when he's playing video games, he's not really looking to escape from work. He has a video game. He's not really looking to obtain a tangible. And attention-based, maybe, but if he's playing video games, he's most likely into the video games, not seeking attention. When we have a behavior that is occurring across all these different settings and all these different events, what you want to think first is automatic. Because when the son is alone, first is the key giveaway. When things are happening, when the son is by himself, there's nobody around, think sensory automatic, think attention. It also helps when he's doing work. So now we have escape in there as well. But when we throw in video games, now we have almost a dual or a tri-function behavior. And when we have all these different possibilities for a function, our first instinct should be automatic, because automatic is internal, right? It's single, it's alone. The person is doing it because it's receiving some sort of internal feedback that's making it good. So whenever you see multiple scenarios like this in a function question, alone, doing work, or playing video games, always think automatic sensory first. If you were asked to explain differential reinforcement to a parent, which of the following explanations would be best? If you get questions on the exam about explaining something ABA related to somebody else, always remember our rules, right? We don't use jargon. We don't use technical language. We explain it in a way the parent can understand. And we always need to assume the parent knows nothing about ABA. And this goes for anybody we're talking ABA to and we're trying to explain their client or our intervention to, right? So we need to explain differential reinforcement to a parent in simple terms. To do that, you need to know what differential reinforcement is. So what is differential reinforcement? Differential reinforcement, we are reinforcing one behavior, putting other behaviors on extinction. DRAs, DRIs, DROs, the main 3 as RBTs we need to know. So we have that definition, but we're not going to use that definition because parents probably aren't going to understand what a DRI is, right? They're not going to necessarily understand putting something on extinction and reinforcing something else. So let's make it even simpler. Let's just describe in the simplest terms what it is exactly we're going to be doing. So A, we're going to use a mixture of extinction, punishment, and reinforcement to change your son's behavior. Now, what is wrong with this? First, we're using technical terms like extinction, punishment, and reinforcement. And when you explain it like this, what you're going to have to do is now explain extinction, punishment, and reinforcement. So now we're getting further away from our ultimate goal of differential reinforcement. Second, punishment is not part of differential reinforcement. So if we're going to explain differential reinforcement, punishment does not need to be there. It's not a component of differential reinforcement. Differential reinforcement involves extinction and reinforcement. So A is just all around wrong. B, we are going to put all maladaptive behaviors on extinction and provide reinforcement to the behavior of interest. Better, it is precisely describing differential reinforcement And if you were talking to other technicians or other BCBAs, this would be a good way to describe it. But when we start saying things like we're going to put maladaptive behaviors on extinction, that starts to become confusing for people not really in the know of what ABA terminology is and means, right? Even provide reinforcement to the behavior of interest. What does that mean exactly? So B is better than A. It is differential reinforcement, but can we make it even simpler? C, we're going to give your son what he asks for when he communicates appropriately and not give him what he wants when he hits or screams. Okay, this looks pretty good. Think about it. If we're going to give the son what he asks for when he communicates appropriately, we're going to reinforce that behavior, but we're not going to give him what he wants when he hits or screams. So we're going to withhold reinforcement. We're going to put it on extinction. C would be a great way to explain differential reinforcement. We are going to reinforce or give the son what he wants when he communicates appropriately, our behavior we want to increase. And then when he hits or screams, we want to decrease those, so we just won't give him what he wants. C can be understood by pretty much anybody. What about D? We are going to use a DRI procedure to teach a behavior that is incompatible with the current one. Very confusing if you don't know what DRI is. Very confusing. What do you mean incompatible? Why would we do that? D is very, very technical. It goes into the weeds too much. C is the perfect way to describe differential reinforcement. It's exactly what we're going to do, and it describes the procedure of differential reinforcement. C is our answer. After recess, Glenn sits down and is given 5 worksheets. He is told to complete all 5 worksheets before he can use the computer. Glenn is on what type of reinforcement schedule? Basic reinforcement schedules give people trouble at first, but when you start to understand the different components and how you can break it down, they become very simple. So remember, we have our fixed and our variable, and then we have our ratio and our intervals. So let's always start with ratio and interval, because interval is going to represent some sort of time-based reinforcement. Ratio is response requirements. Is Glenn on any sort of time-based reinforcement? No, he needs to complete the 5 worksheets. There's no indication that Glenn has a set time limit, that he needs to spend a certain amount of time working or anything like that. He just needs to engage in 5 worksheets and complete those, whatever those responses might be. So we can eliminate intervals. It's not time-based. So we have a ratio schedule now. Now, for all we know, our responses are just the 5 worksheets, right? And the target response might be something different, but we only use the information given in the question. And based on the information given in the question, it is going to be response-based. Now, the number of responses required, is it fixed or is it variable? Well, the question says he needs to complete 5 worksheets, not 4, not 6, not sometimes 5, all 5. So all 5 seems to be very set in stone. 5 is our response requirement. Till you hit 5, no more, no less, don't get to use the computer. So what type of reinforcement schedule is Glenn on? Well, he's on a ratio schedule because it's not time-based, and it's fixed because the number required is not changing. So Glenn is on a fixed ratio 5 schedule. James has been an RBT for 2 years. He typically works with children with autism. Today, James is assigned to a client with severe bipolar disorder. James has never worked with this population. What should James do? This is a very difficult situation for an RBT to be in. It's a difficult situation for BCBA to be in. When your company informs you that you need to take on a client who's part of a population that you have 0 experience with. Now, we're not talking you work with people with autism. You typically work with 8-year-olds, and now you need to work with a 16-year-old. That's different, okay? Age is one thing. This is a completely different diagnosis entirely, and a pretty significant difference, right? Going from autism, children with autism, to someone with severe bipolar disorder, that involves a very different set of training and skills. So if you're put in this situation, like James is, and he's never worked with this population, what does the ethical code say we should do? A, accept the case, do his best, and then come off the case if needed. This is not what we should do. We shouldn't just accept the case and hope for the best. Best case is it works out. Worst case is you do significant damage to yourself or the client. We can't just accept and hope. It's not what we do, right? The ethics codes say we need to work within our competence and within our scope. And as registered behavior technicians, that competence and scope is usually pretty small. So A is out. B, make up a reason why he cannot accept the case. He doesn't need to make up a reason. The ethical code gives him a reason. you need to use the ethical code to your advantage. BCBAs and your supervisors have to adhere to the ethical code as well. So if someone's pressuring you, go to the ethical code and bring that to them. If we look at C, inform his supervisor that it is out of his scope and document the conversation. Perfect. It gives James an out, right? One, he's telling the truth. This is out of my scope. I can't work with this person with severe bipolar disorder. Two, he now has documentation. I've informed my supervisor. He just doesn't take the case, right? They need to figure something else out. Either James has to get additional high quality training and certification, they deny the client, or they give it to somebody else. But James should not take this case. What about D? Accept the case. We cannot deny services to clients. Not true. Many instances where we are allowed to deny services given circumstances, right? Not for the RBT to decide, but in this case, James has no business working with this client. As you can see, the RBT, you are very protected, right? Understand the ethical code and use it, okay? So you've noticed that we've always read all of our answer choices, even if we've identified the answer earlier. And that's a key strategy on the exam. You want to read every single answer choice to be sure you've got the best answer, okay? Don't rush through and only go halfway, right? Always read every single answer choice. Last year, you won $200 at a slot machine in Las Vegas. When you went back this year, you spent $400 and won nothing at all. Since then, you haven't touched a slot machine. Winning nothing is an example of what? Be very careful in this question. I think it's pretty easy, but people tend to get a little confused, right? First things first, it's a behavior question. And what are we looking at in this behavior question? We're looking at this winning nothing, okay? So where does winning nothing occur? Well, it occurs the second time, okay, when you spend 400 and won nothing at all. So that's the consequence of spending 400. And then in relation to winning nothing at all, what happens in the future? Well, you don't touch a slot machine. So does your behavior increase or decrease? Decreases. So we know it can't be reinforcement. Got to be punishment. Has to be extinction. Punishment and extinction, two different things, not the same thing. Don't treat them as the same thing. The difference between punishment and extinction is extinction, reinforcement is withheld. Okay. There's nothing there. It's just withheld. Punishment, positive or negative, we're adding something. So if you put $400 in the machine and nothing happens, has anything been added or taken away? Well, no. Nobody. The consequence is last time was you won $200. This time it's not like somebody took your $200 away or somebody reprimanded you. You just nothing happened. You won nothing at all. Okay. Don't make the mistake of saying, well, you lost your money. That's not the consequence that stops you from coming back. Okay. Because we're looking at it in context of last time. Last time when you put 200 or last time when you put money in, you won money. This time you didn't. So this time what happened? The winning was withheld. The reinforcement was withheld. And now you haven't touched a slot machine. So winning nothing is an example of extinction. You have to look at it in context of the whole question, right? Last year you put money in, you won 200. This year you put money in, nothing happened. It was added, taken away, nothing happened, but reinforcement was withheld. Since then you haven't touched a slot machine. Kind of tricky. Okay, make sure you understand that you have to look inside the context and use all the information available to you to answer these questions. Winning nothing is an example of extinction. A professional chef is evaluating his recipes. He wants to make a change to 2 steps in a recipe that contains 25 different steps. If the chef uses task chaining to teach his kitchen the new recipe, what would be most appropriate? The mouthful, applied question, slow down, do all your work up front, becomes a lot easier. So what do we know? We know we are looking for how the chef is going to use task chaining. Okay. So what type of chaining will he use? What's going to be most appropriate? What do we know? We know that he has 25 different steps in a recipe that he's changing. So they already know this recipe, right? They can already cook it. He's just changing 2 steps. So if we have a task chain where our learner knows the majority of the steps, they're competent, okay, they're able to learn, are we going to take these 25 different steps and reteach each one individually over, forward or backward? Well, no, there's no reason to, right? If you're teaching a client a 13-step chain and they know 11 of the 13 steps, There's no reason to forward or backward chain. Just teach them the steps they don't know. And when we teach them the steps we don't know, what do we call that? Well, is he going to use a task analysis? Well, he's already done that, right? He's created the recipe already. So teaching using a task chaining comes after a task analysis. Task analysis is done. Forward chaining, again, 2 steps in a 25-step routine. There's no reason to start from step 1 when they already know most of the steps. Same with backward chaining, right? They can do most of the steps. You're just changing 2. So what you need to do is total task chain. You need to teach the whole thing again, right? Most steps are staying the same. The only 2 steps you need to know now are the 2 that have changed, and this is what's changed, right? Total task chaining is good for a competent learner, a learner who knows most steps already, and for quick, easy skills, okay? In this case, we have competent learners who know most of the steps already. Just teach the whole chain with the focus on the 2 steps they need to learn. Which of the following is an example of response blocking? All right, response blocking gets confused with extinction quite a bit. But response blocking is not extinction. Response blocking is preventing a person from engaging in a behavior. You're preventing somebody. For example, someone goes to open a door and you block the door. You're blocking them from opening the door. You're not putting their behavior on extinction. You're blocking them from opening the door. There's a big difference. Okay. So we're looking for an example of response blocking, preventing somebody from doing something. James tugs on your shirt for attention. Whenever James tugs on your shirt, you now ignore him. Are you preventing James from tugging on your shirt? You're not. You're just ignoring him. You're putting it on extinction. A is out. Brent will snap his pencil and have to get out of work. Whenever you see Brent pick up his pencil, you take it from him. Are you preventing James from doing or Brent from doing something? You are. You're preventing Brent from snapping the pencil by taking it from him. You're blocking the response. B looks good. What do? Read all of our answer choices. Let's find the best one. C, Blaine will scream to get his iPad. Whenever Blaine screams, his mom gives him the iPad. Are you preventing Blaine from screaming? We're not. We're actually reinforcing him. D, Caleb will flap his hands when he is excited. Yesterday, Caleb started flapping his hands, and his dad took away his Nintendo Switch. Are we preventing Caleb from flapping hands? We're not. We are punishing him. We're using negative punishment. So A is extinction. C is positive reinforcement. D is negative punishment. Only B are we preventing our response blocking. Preventing Brent from snapping his pencil in half by just taking away the pencil. Momentary time sampling tends to do what? Now, we have partial interval, we have whole interval, we have momentary. And all 3 of these tend to underestimate or overestimate behavior because we're only getting a sample size of a larger subset of behavior. If I'm using whole interval, right, and I have 30-second intervals, that behavior has to happen for 30 seconds. So whole interval tends to underestimate behavior because if behavior is only happening for 29 seconds, we're not recording responses. Partial interval is the opposite. It overestimates because if I have an interval and the behavior happens for 1 second, I'm marking a response. So momentary time sampling can technically do both, right? But more often than not, momentary time sampling is going to underestimate behavior. Okay, because you're only looking in a split second if the behavior is occurring or if it's not. So typically, momentary time sampling is going to underestimate behavior. It's not going to give a complete measurement of behavior because it's discontinuous. So this is just something you want to know, right? Kind of a rote question, kind of a memorization thing, just making you aware of it. And then when you're discussing an intervention with stakeholders who are not trained in ABA, what should you avoid using? Well, we covered this earlier in our jargon question, right? When we're talking about differential reinforcement. So this is a intervention question that goes for all stakeholders in general. What do we need to avoid using? A, clear, simple explanations. Well, if you're discussing an intervention with stakeholders, I would hope you're using clear, simple explanations. A is out. B, jargon and technical language. Bingo. We want to avoid jargon and technical language. They don't understand it. They don't get it. They don't know what it means. Don't use it just to sound smart. You're just going to confuse them. C, objective and observable explanations. Yes, we don't speak in mentalistic terms. And then D, language that can be understood by anyone. WS, always speak in a way that they can understand. We're not there to show off. We're not there to show them up. Okay. We're there to make them understand. And we do that, okay, by avoiding jargon and technical language. Fantastic. Please check out rbtexamreview.com for all of our practice materials. Like, subscribe, work hard, study hard, and I will see you soon.